What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Zeus, and I'm back with another video. Yo, if this is your first time at the channel, just know I greatly appreciate you for stopping by. Go ahead and hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. We're taking it the humble route. Guys, I know I've been away. I was on a wonderful vacation in Tampa Bay, Florida with my wife, my son. We had an amazing time. And, sometimes you just got to step back. A lot of people say you got to work, 24/7 and all that type of stuff. But this is a well-needed rest and relaxation, and I'm, back to giving you guys, some opinions, my views on what's going on in the world. And I thought, what better way than after coming back from an amazing vacation with my loving wife and my amazing son to talk about this woman and her video where she says, do women still need marriage? I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts after this video. And remember, like, subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. Let's see what she has to say.
Being married is no longer the standard for women. A lot of us are starting to see that we are better alone. Marriage used to be a thing. Like, you really needed a man at one point. You really needed a husband at one point because women really did not even have rights. Let's keep that real. We couldn't even work at a certain point. And when we started working, we were getting paid pennies. That's why when you hear all them stories about your grandparents and your your ancestors and all those type of things where they was marrying our grandmothers when they was real young, having outside kids, and grandpa really wouldn't shit because a lot of those times, they were getting married just to get married because that's all they could do. They were not getting married because of love. They was getting married because of the benefits of a marriage. Today, there are no more benefits. Today, we are working just as hard as men, if not harder. We take on most of the fucking work in a marriage: kids, house, cooking, emotional. Like, we take on all that baggage. Like, we are really on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to a marriage, to the point that it no longer serves us at this point. Granted, are there some good men still out there? I would like to think so. But I think those men are taken or fucking dead at this point.
All right, so let's try to break this down, right? The whole claim and the whole idea that marriage is pointless, I think it really comes from a place of frustration and not logic. And obviously, like she said, I get it. Times have changed. Women are working, they're grinding, they're hustling. They're trying to build careers, and they're living independently. But at the same time, saying that marriage has no value, that's where I have to push back, right? Marriage, it's not just like a contract. It's not just signing papers. It's really a partnership that amplifies strengths and balances weaknesses. So let me try to explain a little further. Marriage is about interdependence, right? You want to start a family, right? You got to think about it. Do you really want to raise your kids in daycare and, try to juggle all these different things by yourself? Or would you rather have, a stable household where one partner brings in resources while the other focuses on raising the kids, instilling values, and keeping the home tight? Historically, women have always added value, whether it's managing the household or nurturing the family, because you always got to understand the woman is always the first teacher in a child's life. That is work, right? That is strength, right? Marriage is about combining those efforts to build something bigger than yourself. And it's not about one person carrying the whole load, because it's teamwork, right? But the thing is, some people don't see that value because they're not attracting the right partners, right? If you're only attracting a certain type of person, the type of person who they don't bring anything to the table, or, they're not doing anything with their lives, of course you're going to think that marriage is a scam, right? You get what you give, right? Because if you're not adding value to someone's life, why would you expect them to step up for you, right? And we can talk about the bigger picture. We're in a generation right now where a lot of women, are really struggling, right? And that's just the reality of the situation. There's loneliness, there's burnout, and a sense of, I've got nobody to depend on. Why is this? Because we've been sold this idea that, hyper independence is the goal. But humans aren't built to do everything alone, right? Women are out here working jobs that, they're not necessarily built for. And, they feel drained, and they're wondering why they're miserable. But when marriage is done right, it offers stability. And it's not just money, but emotional and even spiritual support, right? It's not about seeing a man as an ATM. It's about building a life together. And if we're being honest, hypergamy, where women are just looking for husbands or partners just for their resources, some people might argue that it's not inherently bad, right? That it's biology. But if you're only looking at a man for his wallet, you're missing the deeper value: protection, partnership, love. When women say that there is no point in marriage, it just makes me think that, there's just been a whole bunch of bad decisions that have been made, and not necessarily a flaw in the institution of marriage itself, right? Now, you can look at me, for example, right? My wife and we're both professionals in our career. I'm in software development. She's a lawyer, and we are both professionals, and we like working towards our goals in our careers, right? And we were both different people before we got married, right? And our son goes to daycare, but obviously when our son comes home, we are the ones instilling certain values, certain characteristics into him, and not just letting the woman who takes care of him at daycare instilling their values, right? And I feel like a lot of people miss that. Before you get married to somebody, you two are individuals, and when you guys come together, you will have to complement each other and the household, right? Now, again, I've made a video about this in the past, right? Who am I to say, my wife, oh, I don't want you to work. We can strictly just work on, we can live off, my income and different things like that. But before I met her, she wanted to be a lawyer. She's now a lawyer. Am I to say, oh, stop being a lawyer so you can just take care of our children? I mean, some people might argue that's the right thing to do. Some other people might argue, there's two professionals in the household. Having two professionals in a household means our household income is at a higher threshold, right? And that's just how we choose to live our lives. That's how we choose for our marriage to work. It might not work for everybody else, but to what this woman is saying, that marriage is pointless, I would highly, highly disagree, right? And like, honestly, right? There's just so many different ways to look at it, right? Like I said, you should definitely be a complete happy person on your own, because marriage isn't about fixing brokenness, right? It's about two whole people coming together to make something even bigger, like how I'm doing right now. But a lot of women, are out here carrying a lot of unresolved trauma, self-inflicted wounds by, poor decisions or just unrealistic expectations, right? You can't expect a man to save you from student loans or a life you built on bad decisions. It's just impossible. You have to be accountable of your own decisions. You have to heal, and then you are then able to bring your best self to the table. That's how marriage works. And honestly, that's just my take, right? I do not believe that marriage is pointless. I think it's just misunderstood, especially in this day and age. It's not about, losing yourself. It's about building something stronger together, right? If you're out here, feeling bitter, it's probably time that you reflect on the choices you've made and the people you let in your life. Stop skipping over the good ones and start valuing. Excuse me. Stop valuing and start valuing yourself enough to attract real love. But let me know what you guys think. Am I on point or am I completely way off? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I'm gonna post this video in the description so you guys can check out her TikTok and different things like that. And don't ever forget, love yourself, but also love the person you're with too. It's you and I verse. Information, application, execution. I just got back from vacation, so there's a whole lot of things that have been happening in the world that I'm going to try to give you guys my honest takes and my honest opinions about. So be on the lookout for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.